Welcome to another edition of It Takes Two. With me, I have my co-host, Sister Ruby, and to my right, I have Sheikh Ahmed Hani. Assalamu alaikum, Sheikh.
Alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh to both of you.
Alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillah. So, as you know, Sheikh, we have a few queries or letters that we get from time to time, or weekly, and inshallah, I'd like to read a letter and just to get your feedback.
Sure.
What has been presented to us. So it says, "Dear Take Two, I don't find my husband attractive. We had an arranged marriage, and although he is a nice man, he bores me. There is no attraction at all or mentally. I feel no lust and no love towards him. The romantic novels and tales of love are a far cry from what we share in our marriage. I have to stop myself from looking at other men and even flirting with them. What should I do?" It's obviously from a sister.
Yes. Well, first of all, I think her priority is in protecting the marriage. Okay? And I think in her letter, she's actually outlining the areas that need to be worked upon in order to protect that marriage. Okay? Which is what she doesn't find her husband physically attractive, for example. So therefore, the husband might not be in shape, for example, because physical attraction is something on one level subjective, but also on another level objective. You see, in terms of how you appear, your level of physical fitness, etc. That's one aspect. Clearly, this letter indicates there's a problem in communication between them. Okay, I mean, for all couples, they are two different people coming into a relationship, so they need to understand and know what the other person likes, what the other person, appreciates, and in terms of contemporary society, what turns them on, in terms of the personality, in terms of activity, in terms of, knowing what the other person is pleased by, and so forth. And this is an area where communication takes place. The fact that she mentioned an arranged marriage.
I thought about that, actually.
Yes.
I thought about that. That seems significant for whatever reason. It just seemed to ring a alarm bell.
Yeah. If
Can I interject
Sure.
at some point? Sorry. I've been trying to hold back. What I found interesting by your response, being very respectful, because obviously we all have different opinions, but being a female, I find that a lot of the time when it comes to relationships, especially when there's issues of tension and breakdown, the onus is always made on the female, and many females feel this way, that it's almost their responsibility to fix things. Now, my understanding is that Allah forbids oppression in any type of situation. So the way I interpreted the letter was saying, and it's my interpretation, the sister hasn't given us enough details, is that she stated that the marriage was arranged. So maybe the match wasn't ideal in terms of personalities, what each person likes, etc. And the tone came across as quite despondent, in that she's almost decided maybe in her mind that the marriage is dead, but she's looking for an excuse, or I wouldn't say excuse, but a way to exit the relationship. And I just found it a bit interesting that a lot of the time, especially in our community and a lot of other cultures, that the onus is made on the woman. Maybe you were saying that because she's written in and taken it the first approach, but shouldn't we be advising the sister to, well, obviously marriage is important, but please don't do anything that you may find oppressive for yourself. I don't know, what are your thoughts?
Well, I wasn't really putting the onus on her as such. But nevertheless, if one person in a relationship detects problems in the relationship, one can say the onus is on them to open that up, because the other person is unaware of it.
So the dialogue.
Yes, but what I'm concentrating on is communication. And communication is a two-way thing. She needs to express to this man, what she wants out of this relationship, what she expects of him, and he also needs to tell her what he expects of her, and for them to work together, And I think it's not always a 50-50 type of a thing. You know what I mean? For example, he might be quite content with her, you know, but she's not content with him. You see? So therefore the onus would be on him to make himself more pleasing to her, you know, than for her than her upon him.
But doesn't she have to bring that to his attention?
Or that communication. She has to bring this to her attention. So they would definitely need some kind of sheikh or family therapist or something like that to come in between there and help them to work things out.
What I've also found in a lot of, say, therapies or when there's marital discord is when the onus is put on the woman or she initiates some type of intervention, often males feel this as degrading. They feel that the fact that you've taken it somewhere else, and sometimes it's very difficult for women to, especially if you're early on in marriage, to decipher how is he going to take this type of information. Is he going to be more enclosed? Is he going to retract from the relationship? How is this going to happen? So what would you advise would be the best method of opening up dialogue? Should say, for example, they involve family members? Should they involve friends? Or how do you approach this?
I think it might have to do with the cultural relationship between them. I mean, again, going back to the arranged marriage thing, it could be an arranged marriage within this community, okay? Or it could be, quite likely, an arranged marriage with somebody outside of the community from another country, for example. And from, usually from a lot of different Muslim cultures, they do not, you know, men and women don't communicate too well. You know, when it comes to, for example, issues like, for example, attractiveness, you know what I mean? You know, issues like activity, issues like, for example, physical fitness. A woman wants her husband to look physically fit and so forth. These types of things are not. And so in a situation like this, you need to talk to his uncle, you know, or his bigger brother or something like that.
Just to jump in there, Shay, do you think that it's something that they could, if there's a communication issue, something that, for example, that she could, because she's the one that's dissatisfied, encourage him, that's something that they could do together as an activity as a couple? Like, say he's, just for example, he's a person that doesn't keep himself well kept necessarily, or he's not in shape. Maybe they could gym together or work out at home together. She could help him to go shopping for some new clothes, or say, you know, sweetheart, that would suit you, or I think that would be nice. That may be a kind of proactive way of dealing with it. But she says she almost has to stop herself looking at other men. So I don't know if the die is set, but it doesn't sound.
Well, you know, look, I mean, unfortunately, and this is quite predictable or natural, okay, that when a person is not getting their intimate needs being met in a relationship, okay, they could stray. Right? This is why I said, you know, the most important thing here is to protect that marriage. All right? When you're not getting what you think you deserve or what you need in a marital relationship, okay, you know, people tend to drift in terms of
become distracted,
being focused on other things, right? Yeah. You see? And this is why it becomes very, very important for the spouses to be cognizant of what the other person wants from them.
I think it's also very important for how the subject is approached. I think on both sides there's probably a lot of tension, a lot of unspoken things that are going on. I feel that the issue might be a little bit deeper than attractiveness, or maybe for her it's more the mental
she mentions
capacity, you know, how they relate with each other. And I think for most human beings, I'm not even going to say women, it's important to have some kind of common ground. It's very difficult to have one thing and not the other. So I found that, as I said before, the way you approach the subject is quite delicate, breaking that initial ice, because you have egos, you have feelings. I mean, other people's feelings are involved. So I would advise this. I'm really saddened to hear by this. Any type of breakdown in a marriage is sad. But I would almost say don't involve other people, because it can cause other problems. I would say try and approach, especially if it's a new marriage, try and build up a dialogue amongst yourselves where you have a safe space where you can discuss things and approach things in a non kind of combative manner. Just say, look, you might be feeling some issues as well here. We're both new at this. You might have some reservations. This is how I feel. Do you have the same issues? Just for the ice, I would say. And then if you have any other issues, I would say bring in other people. But I think it's very important, especially in a marriage, that you solidify your union by having some type of communication, and how you say things is important. I think that's something that you learn. Even speaking to a sibling or a mother, they're going to give you a different dimension as to how they see that person, as to how you interact with them. But maybe you could give your opinion as a male. If someone came to you and said, you know, obviously I don't want to break up a happy home, but I'm feeling there's a bit of, we're not really relating. I just feel like it's more of a sense of duty, that we're not really a team. Do you feel the same way about me? How would you? There's
101 ways that you could approach that situation. But I just wanted to backtrack a little, just to maybe something you mentioned. It brought a thought to my mind that, you know, sometimes women some women, or it's commonly, some people say that women act off of emotion.
Yes.
And obviously there's an emotional issue here, but does that make it more complicated? I mean, I'm going to ask you that as a sister, is it that dimension? Because he could be thinking as a man in a kind of logical and pragmatic way. I bring home the
bacon,
so
speak,
in
the
brackets, the halal bacon, the one made from lamb, right? Yeah. But you know, he's doing his duties as a man, as a provider. But maybe on a sensitivity level, his logic is not, not kicking in. So
sense of duty,
logic and emotion, how do they meet up?
Logic and emotion. I mean, we're all complex human beings, but with females, and I'm not speaking for all females. I don't want to be the ambassador for every female on this earth. I'm speaking for all men, though. Okay, there'll be an email address to send comments to later. But as a female, yes, we have emotions. Men do too. I don't know, are you thinking, or do we get hormonal and we just suddenly become erratic? That can happen, but I like to think most of us are logical thinking people. I think there's as much for the male to lose as there is for a female, maybe a little bit more if this thing didn't work. But I think a lot of the time, this is why I say for females, you can get caught up in the emotion, but men do too, say in anger or frustration, and you need to take that time back and see it from a fresh pair of eyes. But I think you need to approach it in not a personal way, in terms of, I wouldn't start off with saying I don't find you attractive. I would start off by saying, I really find that we don't have a lot in common. Is there something you like doing that I might find interesting? Do you feel the same way about me? So instead of it becoming you and him, it's a general thing, because there's you don't have your guard up.
It's less threatening.
Exactly. But emotions, I think most girls, when they get married, they want to marry their Prince Charming.
I was thinking, what you're saying, when I look at this letter, when I hear this letter, let's say I put it in the voice of a man, it's no different. Like a man saying, I'm not attracted to my wife anymore, I'm not looking at other women on the street, for example. And I think it goes back to being sensitive about what your partner wants that makes them happy out of you. All right, is what your partner wants,
and also what you're willing to do. Because
and what
some
you're willing to
things
do, yes, and so compromise.
Yeah,
you need compromise and meeting people halfway and so on.
Doesn't seem like the sister's asking anything unreasonable.
No,
doesn't sound beyond the pale.
It's not exactly right. It's a problem. This thing is talking about a problem in communication, but it might have some resentment in here. Okay,
yeah.
Because some people are resentful of certain types of arranged marriages. Especially, for example, your father says to you, "You are going to marry your cousin." Right? I don't care what you think. For example, right away that relationship gets into a problem from the start. You see? So you would really have to explore that arranged marriage aspect of it. You see? Because it is quite possible that that relationship cannot work.
Yes.
If you're married to somebody that you detest from the very beginning because he didn't have a choice in it at all, for example.
Indeed. Because every time we communicate for a reason.
Yes.
We use words for a reason. Sometimes the absence of certain words, that speaks volumes. And also, but by the fact that the sister, and you know, my heart goes out to her because it sounds like she's in a real difficult situation. But the fact that she mentions an arranged marriage, my automatic thought was, I wonder if she loved him to begin with, or is it she did, but then the lovers as you know, disappeared.
Or it could be, as we said, and this happens a lot in our community, that at the time it looked like the right thing to do. Everything matched on paper. Let's say universities, backgrounds, I don't know, whatever. But when the work started, there was nothing there. So, and a lot of the times we do that, we oversell ourselves. But when you're left with the person and you're like, this is really hard. And naturally people's minds wander. I think it's very brave of her to say that she finds herself looking at other males. And I think it's really good that we haven't come down to her, because it's natural. Sometimes when you're lonely, you look, as you said, Shay, you look for a distraction. It's not that you're looking for trouble, but the grass is always greener on the other side. So I think that's a normal thing. When you feel like you're missing something, you're going to be looking. It doesn't mean you're going to actively put yourself.
No, she sounds desperate. She sounds desperate. She hasn't started, but she said, I have to stop myself. So it's, you know, there's a kind of it's a cry for help, isn't it? There's a plea in there somewhere.
Yeah, it is a normal reaction, okay, but it's not a good one. Put it this way, right? It's a normal reaction when you are not satisfied in the marital relationship that you have, right? Many people tend to do this, okay? Look outside of the marriage while they're in the marriage, okay? It's not a good one. And from all cultural points of view, it's not a good one.
But when we say look, do we mean physically actively looking for out? Or do we mean you're on the train, a guy with a suit comes up, you look at him and say, wish that was my husband? Maybe she means that.
But even when you say wish that was my husband,
in your head,
that's a problem. That's a problem.
But it's a natural thing. It's a natural thing for a lot of
reaction.
I would say for females and males.
No. It might be a reaction. Okay. It shouldn't be, right? It shouldn't be. People should not be looking at non-mahrams and saying, especially if they're married, okay, and I wish this was my husband, or I wish this was my
Ideally,
wife.
they shouldn't be, but what we do in our heads, you know, that isn't always ideal.
Or if I can jump in, maybe the sister could even be saying, I wish my husband would present himself like that.
Exactly.
But there's something else that
there's
something else that I think tells that we may have missed in this letter. She says it's a far cry from these novels. So where is she getting her information or ideas about romance?
A far cry from the novels.
Yeah, from these romantic novels. What I'm living right now is a far cry from these romantic novels. You know, this idea of like, as children, we hear fairy tales or stories, and you know, the film always ends where they lived happily ever after. But really, that's where the film should begin. Because what is happily ever after? Where's she getting her ideas of what romance should be? Is it from novels? Is that where sisters get their
That's a very good point.
From novels and things?
Yeah. Well, I think everybody, sorry to cut you in again. Everyone starts their foundation of what they want their lives to be from somewhere, be it school, be it novels, be it Walt Disney. And I think especially for girls, we live in a very competitive society when it comes to females, that you're told to, you know, be the best looking, even from a young girl, you know, wear the nicest dress, have your hair a certain way, before you wear hijab, be pretty, be polite, be quiet, do well in school. All these factors are meant to ensure that you get a better chance of finding this spouse, this guy of your dreams. Then along the way, you're fed things along the way. You know, you see the prettiest girl in uni, she marries her Prince Charming, the one who's so brainy. So it's coming from all sides. Even our own parents, we can look at them and say, well, you know, maybe if mum decided not to have a family, she would have a career. So I'm going to steer myself this way. So I think we're getting information from a lot of places, and in this society, when you have the media and you see people, and you're like, oh, they have an ideal marriage. Of course, nobody knows what's going on in their houses. You you say, well, maybe if I'm a bit like this, maybe if I dress a bit like that, even in our own communities, if I wear this type of abaya, maybe it represents something, it will attract this type of person. So I think for women, we're getting messages left, right and centre, from home, from school, from our Islamic centres, the movies. And when you're in a situation when you're very alone, you feel like, I've been sold a lie by everybody. That's how you feel. Well, I'm a good girl. I'm trying to represent myself as maybe an example of, you know, the Ahlul Bayt or somebody. And this is what I've got after, you know, keeping myself pious, going to school, studying. I've now ended up with Darth Vader, for example.
So she feels, a sister in that situation, that analogy you talked about, is feeling shortchanged.
Yes, and maybe he does too. Maybe he thinks, you know, we got the CVs, the resumes, they both match, but she's as boring as a plank of wood, you know, but nobody's initiating the conversation. And
so
that's what I'm worried about.
They got to talk, Sheikh. They got to talk.
I think this bringing in of the romantic novel, okay, could be quite significant. Why? You have two nefarious forces operating in the male-female community.
You say nefarious?
Nefarious forces operating, okay, that color, that significantly color unrealistically people's expectations of each other in a relationship. On the side of men, it is pornography, okay? On the side of women, it's trash romantic novels, okay? The more a male is into pornography, the more unrealistic his expectations from his spouse will be on a physical level.
Yeah.
All right? The more dissatisfied they might find them to be, because they do not fit the ideal that they see
The
in
fantasy,
these
the
things.
imagination. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The same thing with women. All right? What they expect, because of these romantic novels, is a whirlwind type of a romance. Somebody who is extremely handsome, who's got a bod, you know what I'm saying, and these types of things. And so they might compare their spouse to this fantasy, and it might come up, shortchanged. Remember, I was saying, if you put this in the words of a man, there's not much difference. I think when you reach a point of the romantic novels, you can say, this is a far cry, from, I don't know, whoever it is your favorite actress.
Glamorous
exactly,
lady. Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay.
But I would also put in there that, we all have ideals, whether it's from a novel or from a person that we know in history, or I don't think it's necessarily bad to have a kind of mindset of who you would like your partner to be. Of course, to the best of their ability and vice versa, but I wouldn't blame it on, I think what she's saying is she's looking for love. I think that's what she's trying to say. I don't think she's saying I want to be whisked off my feet and have 1,000 rose petals as I enter the room.
I don't think she's saying she's looking for love. I think she's looking for an ideal to love. She's looking for a person who has the qualities that are lovable for her.
So isn't that the emotional feeling? Isn't that the emotional side of this emotional side of women that, as a Sheikh mentioned, men are very visually stimulated and visually moved. So the discussion about men into pornography relates on one level, but on women, the imagination and the emotion is so important. But
it's not also that; it's also action. I mean, I've seen couples where aesthetically they don't match, or one is not as handsome or pretty as the other. But what makes them fall in love with each other is the fact that one of them or both of them are doing something. So, for example, when she steps into the room, she overhears him say to maybe his mum that, mashallah, let's use the name Khadija, she's as beautiful to me as she was on the first day I married her, and this is 10 years ago. And we can clearly see Khadija doesn't look the same way she did 10 years ago. But it's the act that he did that will make something grow. If you're looking at someone who looks like a chalkboard and they don't even care that you're there, of course you're going to go to the magazines, your friends, people in your...
But life is real. Is it
It's
good that
real.
we're stimulated by a fairy tale?
But aren't we meant to be, nice to each other and make one another feel good? I mean, is it so hard for you to say, you know, I think you're wonderful, let's go and do this, and likewise? Maybe she needs a bit of action, because it sounds like the poor brother's just, you know, being a zombie, bless him. He's doing his duties, as you said. But, I mean, you can get a robot or maybe a pet dog to, you know, get your slippers for you or something. I'm just saying, you just need a bit of action, and women are all about action. You could be aesthetically look like a piece of cardboard, but you said something funny, you made an effort, and you know what? I kind of like you because you did that. And the ice will fall a little bit because you made that one step for me. And I think that's what she's looking at. If we're going back to the analogy of books or romance novels or something, she's looking for an action, something that's telling her, hey, this is worth fighting for, keep the thing going. But right now she's probably thinking, I might as well live with a block of cheese.
They really need to, it would sound like what would be best for them is that they need to start a communication. As we initially started out this discussion, that she's the one with the, at least manifest, she's the beloved sister's written in and been kind enough to share a problem. And she's the one with the problem, so maybe she needs to initiate that conversation.
She doesn't have the problem. I think I don't think she has the problem necessarily.
Well, there's a problem, but she's the one with she's the one with the feeling shortchanged.
Yes.
So then it's a hinge. What did they say, that it's the hinge that squeaks that gets the oil?
That's
so
right.
she needs to
But
find the right
honestly,
way
as
of speaking
two
up and
males,
communicate.
How would you feel, just from if a female came to you honestly and said, not really feeling this? How would you take that? I mean, would you feel demasculated? How would you feel?
I would project. I would think, what's wrong with her?
You mean if a woman had a problem with me, for example?
Your spouse came and said to you, is it the way that she relayed the problem? Would that make a big difference to you? Or she just came and said, look, I've got my bags, thank you very much.
As a non-average person, because the average person would not respond like this, I don't think, right? As a non-average person, all right, educated and so on, my first response would be, I'd like to know what she wants of me, okay? If what she wants of me does not challenge my values, for example, does not make me compromise my values, etc. You know
what
I mean?
What about your comfort levels?
Okay, or even my comfort level. But even comfort levels can be modified, can change, right? I'd like to know what she wants of me. What is she not satisfied with of me, right? In detail, so I can do something about it. You see? Because I think the most important thing in a relationship is for your spouse to be happy with you. There's a hadith of the Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam where he praises people. He talks about it as their greatest happiness for you to have a spouse whom you are pleased with. Okay, it's one of the treasures of a human being, to have a spouse that they are pleased with. So of course, pleasure, to be pleased with somebody is something very subjective, right? What might please you mightn't please me. All right? So it becomes very important for us to know what pleases the other person, what they want out of you that pleases them. What they're not getting from you that makes them displeased, that makes them unsatisfied. And for you to talk about it, to know about it, for you to contract about it. I don't necessarily mean formally contract, but to say, well, yes, I'm going to try to be this for you.
But it's interesting, Brother Bilal, your response was you would say something like, well, what's wrong with her?
Yeah,
where did that come from? Where did that kind of...
No, where that would come from is a place, is that like I said, project, I was using a loaded term purposefully. But what I mean is that in a relationship, in a marriage, you would expect that before this thing reaches to number 10, if say number 10 is code red, it's a real problem, that where was the communication at 3 and 4?
See,
hey man, I used to be dressing sharp, but I see you slipping, babes. What's going on? You used to be sharp. But I wouldn't, to the point. I'm kind of wondering, well, what communication,
You see,
what problem
as you guys
do we
were
have?
talking about that, being a woman, this isn't even my letter. I started feeling guilty for even raising the conversation. Like, my intention isn't to break somebody down, but now I feel guilty that you've had that response just by what you said. I feel that
Brother Bilal, right?
just by what Brother Bilal said, he's ruined
I'm the bad
my life.
guy. I'm the bad guy, right?
Hey guys, let's make it clear. It's him, okay?
No, but then you feel, this is the thing with women, we have so many thoughts going through our heads. We feel one way, but then we feel guilt. Then we feel responsible for the other person's reaction. Then we feel like, are we being silly? Or does this look bad on me? Don't I have a right to my feelings? So many voices going on inside. And as I said, I just felt, gosh, I feel a bit guilty now.
No, everybody has I agree with you, sister. Everybody has a right to their feelings, but I'm really driving home that point. And I guess not just about this letter, but to anybody that's watching that, it's just my opinion. But I think that communication is so important that things need to be communicated early. Whether it's men communicating with their wives or vice versa. Like, a man doesn't need to wait till she's 40 stones before he says, I don't really, you could kind of cut in at 20 stones.
A lot of females, and this is a problem that we have, when we want to put a view across, we treat the men like they're our friends, like another girlfriend. So we bring a female approach. So if we're close friends, I might say to you, you need to hit the treadmill, my dear. And then to a guy, he's probably thinking, well, have you looked at yourself lately? And sometimes I think it's really important that you get information, and both genders learn how to approach one another, because language, as you said, can be really loaded. And sometimes the advice that your mum gives you, that may have worked for your dad, but it's not going to work for your spouse who's going to think, that approach isn't going to...
Communication, I guess we could say that we can agree at least, although we disagreed a lot, but we could agree that communication is everything. It's been really interesting, this first segment, but we're going to stop for a short break, and we hope to see you on the other side of the break. So, assalamu alaikum. Assalamu alaikum and welcome back to It Takes Two. We have another scenario. We have another letter that I'd like to read out and get some feedback from yourselves. Dear It Takes Two. I've been married for a couple of months now. Although parts of my marriage are good, intimately there is an issue. My husband has unusual tendencies. They are almost perverted to some extent. The intimate acts which he prefers are not things women should partake in. I think there may be something wrong with him. We have to use our, a level of imagination. It's from an anonymous writer.
Well, look, I think when I'm hearing this...
what springs to mind, Sheikh?
Two things come to mind. One, in terms of his preferences, put it this way, are these preferences not seen as perverted, okay, but from an Islamic point of view are not? That's one thing, okay? On another level, that they are as such, okay, especially from the point of view of Islam, I don't want to sort of speculate, but I think these are one of the two things. So I think the first thing that person should know, okay, is how are these things objectively classified and not subjectively classified?
Right.
Maybe from her own particular subjective or cultural point of view, okay, it might be something that is considered to be perverted, okay, but from an Islamic point of view, it is not. Right? And so that has to be established. If it is established that it is perverted from an Islamic point of view, okay, then she should speak to that husband from an Islamic point of view, saying, look, what you're doing is going against the commands of God. It's a sin, and I would not participate in that. Okay?
What about on the contrary though? What about on the opposite side? Because sometimes issues arise not necessarily between halal and haram, but for Muslims, issues arise when it's between halal and halal. So maybe, you know, sometimes, not suggesting this particular sister, but saying in general that sometimes women can be a bit frigid or a bit inhibited sexually.
May I interject there?
Of course, sister.
Being a woman, I think, again, many different types of women, but we don't know if where this woman culturally is from. Maybe in some cultures, say if you're an Indonesian, you're encouraged to be more frigid and more reserved. It's a sign of honor. It's a sign of being modest, and you're encouraged to carry that, even Islamically, through your marriage. So you keep that pretense up, for example. And maybe what she's referring to frigid, as you said, isn't actually frigid. It might be something halal, but it's been drummed in her head so much that she's feeling this is a bit outlandish for me. So that is a different issue. I think if you feel uncomfortable doing anything, then obviously you need to, you know, get to know yourself a bit better, you know, ask yourself some questions, do your research. You're in a marriage, and, you know, Islamically, Shaykh, it does say that I think both spouses are meant to be pleasing to one another. On the flip side, you may have a woman who's been raised in the West, who is aware that everywhere she goes there's a billboard which has some kind of suggestion to it. This is how you need to be if you drink a can of Coke. This is how you should look if, you know, you're driving your car, for example. Very suggestive. So then, you know, you may be with, say, a brother who, you know, has lived in the West or has had certain experiences or come into Islam, who now wants you to be the girl in the billboard, you know, who's advertising a Coke. This is how you should look. And maybe his expectations are not realistic, like we discussed in the previous program.
What's wrong with being, for her husband, what's wrong with being the girl in the billboard? In terms of Islamically, you know, her duties as a wife. Should she not be the girl in the billboard for her husband Islamically?
Maybe she's not comfortable with that side of herself yet. Is she a newlywed? Maybe she doesn't have that. She's a newlywed. Mm-hmm. Okay, so you have that adjustment time where you're learning about each other, what feels comfortable, what doesn't. And maybe she's not confident. Maybe nobody's had this discussion with her.
I think the hidden hand of porn is in there as well.
Why say
right? We're talking about a man. This is the Western context.
Yeah.
All right.
Believe
and
so.
If a woman is saying that, for example, my husband or my spouse wants unusual sexual requests from me, where did he get that from?
Well, what is
unusual? What is unusual? Because we could ask.
Yes,
like,
I stand up.
In a Muslim society, every, you know, like, or not Muslim, but, you know, as Muslims, to view X, Y, and Z is forbidden, to listen to X, Y, and Z is forbidden.
Yes.
So then how do Muslims actually gain an idea of
this
what
is why I said at the beginning,
in terms of intimacy?
This is why I said at the beginning, and our society has a problem with this. Our society
is in the
Muslim society.
Okay.
Right? Are very, very inhibited with respect to the discussion and teaching people about proper sexual etiquette or proper sexual behavior. Okay? We do not talk about it. Okay? And so people exist in a vacuum.
And it creates problems, both sides.
You know, that vacuum is filled with stuff, okay, that they get from the media, for example. All right? Mm-hmm. I think the first thing that person needs to know, okay, is if her husband's expectations, okay, are in conformity with Islamic etiquette or not. And Islamic etiquette with respect to sexual relationships is quite vast. It's not restricted or narrow, okay?
As people may imagine.
As people might imagine.
Yeah.
Right? It's quite flexible, okay? We do have our boundaries. We do have our standards, okay? So for example, he might want some kind of voyeuristic type of behavior, okay? This is outside of Islam. This is against Islam, okay? You know, but other things might not. You see, they need to first of all know where to put this within an Islamic context. It's very important because that now leads to a kind of non-subjective type of discussion. Look, I'm not doing this. You shouldn't want this from me. You shouldn't talk to me about this because from an Islamic point of view, you know, it is not halal.
So,
all right?
so what about from the husband's point of view, though? If he discovers or they discover that this practice is halal or certain practices are halal, does he have a right as a husband to say, you need to loosen up, you need, sweetheart, you need to lighten up?
I wouldn't call it a right, okay? But I would say this, that
not just demand, but a right to even request.
Yeah, well, there's a right to request, right? But what they need, okay, is to be able to sort of adjust, okay? You know, in terms of he might want a particular type of behavior, all right, that she is not comfortable with, all right? So they work upon that. You know, she should be saying to herself, okay, I'll try to accommodate this, all right? You know, but this is going to take a little time. This is quite fine.
See, I'm feeling...
I can hear the sister chomping at the bit.
I'm feeling as a woman, again, I'm feeling quite vulnerable, and I'm feeling that, again...
Vulnerable for her.
I feel vulnerable, not for myself, for her.
Yes.
But I feel that, again, the onus is on me to educate myself. I'm thinking what we need is dialogue. We need discussions with our youths. We need open discussions about what males expect from females, what females expect from males. Not their granddads doing it, but young people and people who are a little bit older than them. Because what is lacking is education from both sides. In America, where I lived, you know, before a girl got married, we would pair them up with someone who was a bit older than her, that she had some affinity to, where they could have discussions like, this is what to expect on your wedding night. I don't know what you've been watching, Gone with the Wind or whatever, where he's going to come in with a horse and you're going to be, oh, that's brilliant. This is what to expect. You might find this uncomfortable. It did, because we had a lot of sisters who didn't know what the dickens was going to happen, and what they expected isn't what happened. And then you'd have males who look so upset, as if, you know, someone had died the day after, and they're like, well, sorry, we've been waiting all this time to get married, you know, enjoy half our deen, whatever, and it's rubbish. And it's like, well, it's education on both sides. And as you said, Sheikh, that you need time. But as a female, when I hear that, I feel like, oh my God, that you're already expecting a lot from me. You don't really know my circumstance where I've grown up from, what my ideas are. And already I'm meant to be some kind of cheerleader with the pom-poms and a baton twirling. And it's the way you approach it with a female that's very important. I think a lot of males need to be considerate, and again, the way they approach the female, because women
need to be considerate? Because
women do need to be considerate.
Men have requirements and women have requirements,
yes,
in terms of sensitivity and communication.
If I'm not the type of person to do something, just because you've got married and you think, oh, now I've got married, all my needs can be met. Maybe it's not in my capacity or remit to be everything that you want me to. And that causes pressure. I'm going to try, maybe in other ways, but maybe I don't feel comfortable doing those things.
Is that okay if we change the genders, if we swap it around for the spouse? So it was a gentleman, a brother that had written and said, you know...
No, it's not okay. No.
Or is it, yeah, well, is it okay if we swap it around?
I think we need to be real.
It's the same thing.
It's the
same thing, right? Look, people do not come into a relationship, a marital relationship, as a blank slate. They don't.
Well, some people do.
Well,
people do.
They're probably living in a blank environment.
Some people are very
must have
shy.
blank slate is in terms of ideas. You're going to get ideas of whatever.
They have ideas of sex. What kind of sex is best for them, for example. They have ideas about this. They have ideas of what is the best spouse. They have ideas about what the ideal spouse is wearing. They have ideas about how I relate to my spouse. They have all these ideas. They have ideas about when I come home, you know, how my spouse will be to me. They have ideas. People have ideas.
Yes.
All right? And when it comes to, for example, this is clearly about sexual behavior. Right? When it comes to sexual behavior, you have a whole lot of people, okay, who are quite, outside the outside the box in some areas and who are quite inhibited in other areas. You know what I mean? And it's two people coming into a relationship. And sometimes these inhibitions or exhibitions, sometimes might not be in the same
They might
area.
not be in sync.
They mightn't be in
with each
sync.
other.
All right? What we need to let our young people know, and also married people, okay, is this is natural. And that basically what you have to do is to try to get in sync, right? And one of the most important criteria for being in sync is being clear about what is halal and what is haram, what is right and what is wrong, okay? Once you put all the wrong things aside, okay, then, you say, okay, let's work upon the right things. I mean, I might not be oriented or inclined to what you would like in situation X, right? But let's talk about situation X and find some kind of compromise. You see?
Where would you
I think that's
go
how
for
things
that?
work.
That seems like for many would be an uncomfortable discussion to have. I mean, you wouldn't go to your manager or your local Islamic centre. I would think as a woman you would feel uncomfortable going to a man and...
I'm not talking about going to anybody. I'm talking
They
about...
say once you clarify what's legal.
Yeah. You know, what is right and
can-
what is wrong. And you can read about this.
Yeah.
You don't have to go to a marriage to find out. You can
But
read
what
about
if you're
it.
from different viewpoints?
Exactly. The different viewpoints have to do with you being in sync. Your viewpoint is based upon what you've been taught, what you've heard, whatever. What I'm saying is, issue A, all right, is a point of contention. We realize that issue A in itself is not haram. Okay? It's just simply, I don't like issue A. I'm averse to issue A. My spouse wants issue A. All right? I'm aware of this. Okay? We have a point where we can talk about it. Right? We have a point where you can say, okay, my spouse, if this is extremely important to you, all right, I will try to accommodate you.
See, I already feel pressure when you say that, because most of the time in relationships, let's just face it, that a lot of the time the female has the capacity to be more accommodating and wants to please, especially if it's half of your deen. And what you were saying to me is, let's have a discussion and see if I can come round to that kind of idea that you want. That sounds like it's some pressure.
No.
I have to disagree with that. I have to disagree.
Okay.
I'm sorry, but I have to.
No, please.
I think I'm going to question where Muslim sisters are getting their ideas about in terms of subject of this matter, in terms of intimacy, because there's information that we get from the Islamic narratives about purity and nobility, and I think that somewhere along the lines is a kind of a misreading or a misinterpretation of what it means to be pure or to be of good character. So people take that into their marriage and are kind of frigid, because and Islam is not saying that these things are forbidden.
This is true, but maybe did she state that she was 2 months into her marriage?
Yeah.
Maybe she's thinking if she lets everything out the closet, he's going to think, what the dickens have you been up to? Where is this little meek mouse that I've got to?
We don't get an impression here. She is actually concerned and disturbed by his
unusual tendencies, as she
proclivities.
I think what she's saying is she doesn't know where to go for a reference. That's what she's trying to say. So how does she know that this is unusual? How does she decipher it? Maybe it's a cultural thing for her.
Yeah, this is the point I made, right? It can be quite subjective, and she needs to have an objective approach to it first, which is, first of all, to distinguish between the halal and the haram in the relationship. But the point I'd like to make here also is this. In terms of, intimate demands, for example, all right? As long as they are halal, if it's coming from the husband, okay? From an Islamic point of view, the onus is upon the woman to accommodate that, okay? Unfortunately, I don't sound as, politically correct.
Some people say, who made that fatwa?
For example, in the Holy Quran, Allah says, approach your wives in whichever way you like. For example, you have many hadith that talk about, if the husband requires intimate relationships, and sometimes in the most unusual circumstances. For example, while baking bread or while riding the back of a camel, for example. It's not that you should do it like that, you know what I'm saying? But it shows you that the onus is upon the wife making herself available to the husband, okay? In whichever way he wants, barring the fact that, for example, let's say there might be some kind of physical illness involved or some, whatever, okay? The onus is on that. There's no doubt about that, okay? Does this remove the need for communication? It does not, all right? But it does have a bottom line. And
really. Understanding, I would hope.
And understanding,
well.
yes. This is why I say,
for example, going back to the lady's situation, she's a newlywed, she may have limited experience. I would hope the brother would be patient enough to understand her current limitations and be willing to work with that. I wouldn't want him to quote what the sheikh said and expect a triple somersault.
Thank you very much.
Gymnastics when, she's new to the situation. So I'll be hoping that the brother is of sound mind to be able to decipher when to say what and when to act upon what. And I think people need to be patient, but people also need to understand that how male and female see things can be two different things.
I too hope that the brother would be patient, and I hope that maybe the sister would be willing to grow with the brother if it is something that is something permissible and may enhance their marriage. I think
that's something that, again, the community needs to stress, that our daughters, our girls, or whoever, we need to encourage them that when they're in a marital situation, that is a halal place where they can express themselves. Mm-hmm. And there's no shame in expressing yourself. Mm-hmm. This is a blessing from Allah. Mm-hmm. I think there needs to be education on both sides, and you don't have to let your mum know what you're doing, or your friends know what you're doing. Some people do. It's a cultural thing. They want to know what you've done, but it's okay. I think, again, could be a self-esteem thing. You need to have confidence in yourself. Maybe you haven't had any good role models in a marriage. Everyone's so, as you said, frigid and, robotic, that you think, oh, that's how I need to be. I don't dare give off the scent that maybe we like to hold hands.
What do you think about that, Shay?
What's that?
About the robotic nature sometimes, or unrealistic modelling in Muslim communities? Is it unrealistic, the expectations that are put out there?
I think it's partly both, right? It's partly both. I think there are Muslim individuals who have a very warped understanding of relationships, okay? There's a whole lot of abuse in the Muslim community, for example, right? A whole lot of oppression of women, especially. Mm-hmm. That does exist, right? But there's also in some communities and individuals a great deal of tenderness and intimacy and love and compassion, and so on, and excitement. There are some relationships like that. So I think it all depends upon the environment in which you are, the social environment in which you are, the family environment. To what extent people, like in this girl, for example, to what extent they know about the difference between halal and haram in terms of intimate expectations, all right? Mm-hmm. For example, the sister mentioned holding hands, right? Some people have a problem with that, even though it's not a problem holding hands, right? There might be a problem about holding hands in particular environments, okay? But holding hands in itself is not a problem, you see?
I wanted to ask, Islamically, do we have a notion of being forced to be intimate? So rape, for example, because you can be married and not want to be
physical. Rape is a crime from an Islamic point of view. Rape in a marriage, that exists, okay? Islam does not encourage, the Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, for example, never ever encouraged a man to approach his wife without her participation, without her, her involvement. You know what I mean? For example, there's a hadith where he says, don't approach your wife like an animal, okay? Play with her first, for example, So therefore, there is this idea of rape in a personal relationship. However, from Islamic law, from an Islamically legal point of view, it will be very, very difficult to prove, because just like, for example, rape in the non-marital sense of the word requires something like 4 witnesses to the act and so forth, it becomes quite problematic.
What I wanted to ask from a brother's point of view is this term frigid that you've brought up a lot, is that what brothers are finding?
But Bilal brought it up.
That was my word. I'm going to own the word.
Is that how brothers see practicing Muslim women? Generally, that we're, because we're trying to practice our faith and be pleasing to Allah, that we come across as being frigid?
I don't think so. I don't think so. I don't think so at all. I think a practicing Muslim man would find a practicing Muslim woman very attractive. It's a very important component in being attractive to that woman. A practicing Muslim man will not find a non-hijabi, for example, as attractive as a hijabi. If all things are given, of course. All things being equal.
Well, I have to completely disagree with you there, because
I still haven't answered the frigid. It was
my
please
word. Go ahead, go on. Your word, you own it.
Yes, no. I was going to say, in my experience, talking to some of the younger brothers who are, approaching marriage or are willing to discuss issues of that nature, and there is let's say, I wouldn't say that's the common view on the street, but that there is a critical mass of young men who feel that way. I wouldn't even say think that way.
Where
feel
is
that way.
Coming from? Is it some people have actually found that, or is it the image that women are giving across that they
maybe
they walk on water?
Some speak from their experiences as like very young.
Right.
Divorcees, or but young. We're talking about young brothers.
So I think I think what we're finding is there needs to be education on both sides. But if I could just go back to the Sheikh's comment, being a hijabi woman myself, the comment that you made that a lot, not to quote you directly, but a lot of Muslim men find hijabi women more attractive.
Muslim men.
What did you say?
Pious Muslim men.
Find hijabi.
Would find a hijabi woman, all things being equal, right?
That's qualified it though. All
yes,
things being equal.
All things being equal, would find a hijabi woman much more attractive than a non-hijabi woman.
But evidence on the street shows otherwise. And
please explain.
Well, I'm sorry. I think a lot of the time, who we portray we are and who we actually are don't marry up, especially when it comes to brothers. I think when it comes to brothers, the pious brothers, the first thing they'll look at is maybe a revert sister who's had some experience in the past, as opposed to a sister who's been, raised in an Islamic household, because he may be concerned that, as you said, she may be a bit frigid, for example. So as sisters, we come across this a lot when it comes to beauty, aesthetically pleasing person. They've had their fun before, and then now when it comes time to get married, they want the pious.
Why, if it's not more attractive?
Because they've had their cake and they want to eat their cake now. They've had their cake and now they want to eat it.
I would have interpreted it as the non-hijabi, as maybe that would be deemed by brothers as, okay, that was superficial attraction, but like on a deeper, more
But that's not okay, because
level.
Why should I be waiting around trying to please Allah while you go and have your fun, and then alhamdulillah, when the revelations come to you, you want the pious sister? How is that?
That's what we're going off.
Going into that is going to be going into all kinds of details. I think that it wouldn't end. Okay, let's put all these details aside and ask the question: who is attracted to a hijabi sister?
Right.
Who is finding a hijabi sister
Yes.
attractive? All right, and it would be a Muslim who attaches a great deal of importance to hijab. That hijab brings out a certain aspect of a woman that he likes. Mm-hmm. You see? And I think this is enough. Whether he was active before, he wasn't active before. You know what I mean? I think
practicing, little practicing. It's still
the same
true.
reality.
It's still true. Yeah.
Okay, I really want to say something. If that is the case, then why do we have so many males in our community who have mutas? They have the chador wearing wife, may Allah bless her, that's wonderful. And then they have other
Again,
partners
you
that
see,
look differently.
yeah, you see the
I don't know about these
the
statistics.
possible reasons.
I don't know about these statistics.
Right? The possible reasons could be astronomical. You know what I'm saying? You know, to say that, for example, a male is going to have a most likely with, for example, a non-hijabi person.
That was an
okay?
automatic inference from what you said. Well, you have a Shadorian wife and a mutter.
You see, you know, there are all kinds of possibilities that lead to this. You see what I'm saying? I'm not talking about that type of a person. You know, I'm talking about a person who genuinely finds a hijabi woman attractive, right? And would marry such a woman, okay? Because that aspect of herself is something that's important. Why? Why? You know why? Because look, I think what attracts people to people are not just physical, okay? Not physical, but also in terms of values, also in terms of what that person stands for, right? So for example, in the non-Muslim community, all right, the average man might find, let's say, a prostitute, okay, a beautiful looking prostitute, to be beautiful, right? But will never marry somebody like that.
But there's a contradiction.
That was my initial point.
Contradiction in our community. That's the issue. The wife will be a pious-looking person, and then they'll have other relationships which will be completely different to what the wife looks like or acts like. And this is a reality. Let's not pretend it doesn't happen.
No, but sister, you actually asked something which the nature of your question is interesting. In the sense you said he'll have a chador wearing wife and then he'll have a mutter, as if to, why can't can he not mutter somebody that wears a chador? Well, it would seem mutually exclusive.
Definitely, but what I'm saying, when we're talking about relationships and we're talking about physical needs, they're not necessarily going for that one type of person. I think most men, if you're really honest with yourself, you don't have one type of person that you're interested in. You're looking for the physical. With women, we have to have a condensed version of everything in one person. With males, especially Muslim males, you can go for the religious woman, the mother, the catwalk model, because you have those options open to you. And I think to kind of not acknowledge those things is not really right. And as a woman, going back to this sister's letter, she's probably feeling like, whoa, his actions are a bit out there. And she's probably thinking, goodness me, if I don't step up, what's he going to do? And a lot of women have that insecurity.
But maybe there's a clue of sort in there that maybe the sisters need to be, discover what is halal and, discover what works with them and their spouse.
Then you have the argument of how much do you give? The Sheikh said that, it's incumbent upon a woman to be pleasing to her husband. But what if that's not in your capacity? What if there are some things you cannot do? It's just not in your nature.
This is where communication comes in. This is where patience comes in, and so forth. Right?
To negotiate? Could you say communication? Because you can communicate yourself, but you have to negotiate.
Yes, I just said you can use that word negotiate, right? And all relationships, all marital relationships must have that component. The weaker that component, the worse the marriage. That's how it rolls. You know what I mean? We might not be able to give everything our spouse needs. Okay? We have to recognize this on both sides.
Yeah.
Okay, but we have to prioritize what is most important for you, right? And that spouse needs to know what is most important for you. It mightn't be important at all for them, right? But once you know that this is the most important for that person, and if they don't get it, our relationship is over, okay? Then I have to try my best to give that, especially if it is not haram, okay? And if it is within my capacity. If it is not within my capacity, then I really think that we could either accept that we can't have this, or we might have to accept that we have to separate our ways.
Or there's other options. There may be other options available.
Maybe we'll have a chance to
I like
explore
that
that in
word capacity.
some detail. Maybe we can explore that in a maybe in another show, Sheikh. You have to come back. But unfortunately, we've run out of time. But it's been a pleasure. So thank you for participating. And Sister Ruby, as always, thank you for your fiery participation.
Dear.
And thank you for staying with us for the duration of It Takes Two. Until next week, stay safe. Assalamu alaikum.
Do you need some relationship advice? Do you have marital problems or questions? Perhaps you want to get married and you have questions for us. Please send your thoughts or questions to ittakes2@sophiatv.com.